It was a crisp September morning when I, Detective Robert Hensley, stood on the porch of my new home at 223 Maplewood Lane in the Crestview Estate subdivision. After years of serving as a police detective, I thought I'd seen it all until I met Margaret Whitaker, the HOA president who would turn my quiet move into a neighborhood war. What started as petty disputes over grass height and doormats spiraled into a shocking felony that exposed a web of corruption. This is the story of how one woman's obsession with control led to her downfall and how I, unknowingly, became her biggest mistake. I just waved off the moving truck when I heard the sharp tap of heels on pavement. Margaret Whitaker, a woman in her late 50s with a razor-sharp blonde bob and a blazer ironed to perfection, marched up my walkway like she owned the place. "I'm Margaret Whitaker, Crestview Estates HOA president," she declared, clutching a tablet like a weapon. "We need to address your violations immediately." I was stunned. Violations? I hadn't even unlocked the door yet. She rattled off a list. The moving truck parked too long, boxes visible through my window. Fines totaling $125. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Ma'am, I just got here." Her eyes narrowed. "This is a prestigious community, Mr. Hensley. We have standards." That first encounter set the tone. Margaret wasn't just enforcing rules. She was marking her territory. When she hinted that people like me didn't belong in Crestview, her tone dripping with prejudice about my urban background, I knew this wasn't about boxes or trucks. As a black detective with a master's degree and a spotless record, I'd faced subtle bigotry before, but Margaret's audacity was next level. She boasted about driving out residents like the Thompsons, who dared to plant a vegetable garden. "I run this HOA like a tight ship," she said. I smiled politely but made a mental note. If Margaret wanted a fight, she'd picked the wrong guy. The next day, a violation notice arrived, printed on official HOA letterhead with Margaret's signature scrawled like a royal decree. My grass was allegedly 2.3 inches tall, 0.3 inches over the limit. My doormat wasn't beige. My blinds weren't off-white. Even my driveway had tire marks. Total fines, $375. I measured the grass myself. 2.1 inches, well within bounds. The doormat was a standard black, welcome. The tire marks? Barely visible. Margaret wasn't enforcing rules. She was inventing them to harass me. I tried reasoning with her at her pristine colonial down the street, where every shrub was trimmed to geometric perfection. She stood on her porch, refusing to budge. "I measured 2.3 inches, she snapped, but wouldn't say where. "File an appeal. It's $50 and takes 6 weeks. When I pointed out her neighbor's longer grass, she bristled. "They're exemplary residents." Then she slipped. "I researched you, Detective Hensley. Your job brings trouble, criminals, gangs. We don't want that here." "My job? I investigate financial crimes, not street gangs." But Margaret had already painted me as a threat to her perfect suburb. Her campaign intensified. Daily inspections, photos snapped from every angle, and absurd violations piled up. A half-inch gap in my trash bin lid. My car parked 18.7 inches from the curb instead of 18. Even excessive bird activity. Because sparrows nested in my tree. I documented everything, knowing her written notices were evidence of harassment. Then I attended an HOA meeting to confront her publicly. The Crestview clubhouse was packed with curious residents. Margaret, in a navy blazer with gold buttons, stood at a podium, accusing me of racking up $800 in fines. "Detective Hensley disregards our standards," she said. I stood up. "Can you explain these fines?" "Like the one for birds in my yard." The room murmured. An elderly man, Walter Kim, challenged her. "There's no rule about wildlife." A woman, Susan Patel, flipped through the bylaws. "No section covers birds." Margaret's face turned crimson as residents questioned her selective enforcement. "Why haven't I been fined for my broken bin lid?" Walter asked. No one else had been cited for such nonsense. Margaret stormed out, but the residents voted to revisit the issue next month. I thought the public humiliation might stop her. Instead, it unleashed a monster. The next morning, my car was key-deep scratches down the driver's side. No proof, but the timing screamed Margaret. She hired a security guard, Tom Vance, to document my property, claiming HOA easement rights. "Your yard looks fine to me," Tom whispered, embarrassed. Margaret snapped, "You're not paid to think." Then she escalated her threats. "I've run this HOA for 12 years, she hissed. "I've driven out 6 families. I know city officials who owe me favors. I know which captain takes kickbacks. Keep pushing, and you'll regret it." Her words weren't just threat, they hinted at corruption. I called my partner, Detective Laura Torres. This isn't just harassment, Laura said. She's admitting to extortion. 3 days later, Margaret crossed the line. I came home to find my front door chained shut, a padlock securing a heavy chain to a bracket drilled into my porch. A sign read, "Property secured by Crestview HOA. Unauthorized entry prohibited." I was locked out of my own home. As I dialed 911, Margaret sauntered over, smirking. "This is legal under HOA emergency powers," she said, citing a non-existent clause. I showed her the bylaws. No such rule existed. "We voted last night," she claimed. "Emergency meeting. I hadn't been notified." She shrugged. "You weren't available." Officers arrived, including Laura's cousin, Officer Carla Ruiz. "Ma'am, you can't chain someone's door," Carla said. Margaret waved her tablet, insisting it was a civil matter. Sergeant Paul Carter pointed to the drilled bracket. "This is property damage." Margaret doubled down, shouting, "I have authority." Then, in a rage, she grabbed a garden stone and hurled it through my picture window. Glass shattered across my living room. "Now you have something to arrest me for," she screamed. The officers cuffed her for felony criminal mischief and unlawful restraint, but Margaret kept ranting. "I know people who can end your careers. This isn't over." Her arrest was just the beginning. Margaret's threats about connections caught the FBI's attention. Agent Sarah Coleman arrived that night. "Your HOA president may have opened a Pandora's box," she said. The investigation revealed Margaret's 12-year reign as a blackmailer. She documented affairs, bribes, and crimes by council members, judges, and even officers, using the dirt to manipulate them. Her meticulous record spreadsheets, recordings, photos became a prosecutor's dream. She'd embezzled $600,000 from HOA funds, living lavishly while fining residents for trivialities. She destroyed families like the Thompsons and Lynns, using fake code violations and tax audits to drive them out. Margaret posted bail but couldn't resist one last stunt. She organized a protest outside my house, hiring strangers to hold signs like "Stop Police Corruption." She spun herself as a whistleblower framed for exposing police misconduct. Local news covered the community tensions, painting me as the villain. But her protest violated her bail terms, and Agent Coleman had her rearrested. From jail, Margaret contacted activists, claiming to be a political prisoner. A few groups bought her story, crowdfunding her defense and rallying for her release. At trial, her own records sealed her fate. The jury convicted her on 17 federal charges: racketeering, extortion, fraud. The judge, unmoved by her courtroom tirade blaming me and the corrupt system, sentenced her to 12 years in prison and $2.5 million in restitution. Margaret screamed as she was led away, "I'll appeal. You'll all pay." But her empire was gone. Her friends faced indictments, and Crestview began to heal. 6 months later, I sat on my porch, watching kids play without fear of citations. Walter Kim, the new HOA president, slashed the bylaws to a sensible 8 pages. The grass rule? Reasonably maintained. The bird ban? Gone. Neighbors hosted barbecues, planted gardens, and smiled again. The Thompsons and Lynns returned, their lives no longer under Margaret's shadow. The city overhauled its government, firing corrupt officials and adding oversight. Margaret's victim narrative collapsed as her crimes hit the headlines. In prison, she tried bossing inmates around, earning no allies. Her desperate letters to activists grew incoherent, ignored by all. As I sipped coffee, listening to sparrows in my oak tree, I realized Margaret's downfall came from her own arrogance. She thought her connections made her untouchable, but she underestimated a detective who knew how to build a case. Crestview Estates was free, a true neighborhood again, where people cared for each other not because of rules, but because it's home. What do you think about Margaret's actions? Have you faced bullies or injustice in your community? Share your thoughts in the comments. Did she deserve her fate? Or was the system too harsh? Let's discuss how we confront abuse and stand up for what's right.